Namaste students, myself Sunil Kumar from the Department of Computer Science. Today we are moving to the next session based on the chapter that you can see here, problem solving methodology. We already discussed with the mini topic or mini sessions based on the problem solving methodology, and remember that this is very important topic for first phase. Or next we are studying, what we are studying is that is the basics of programs and how to write the program. If you want to write any program like that, I'm not saying about particular language, or I'm not saying about C++ or C language. So totally, if you want to write any program language, we have to follow some rules and regulations, or we have to know some basic things that we are mainly going to discuss in this session. And previous sessions, what we discussed in previous sessions, we mainly discussed about the problem solving steps. If whenever any problem is given or whenever any task is given, means how to solve the particular task. So that we discussed in the last session. That there are different steps. Are the problem definition is there. After that, problem analysis. After the next step is design of a solution. If you go to design of a solution, designing a solution, there are two methods are available: flowchart and algorithm. After that, what we discussed, next one is coding. After that, we have to do the coding. After coding, we have to go testing and debugging. When you test the debug, program will be working proper. Then we can do the documentation. After documentation, the program will be or software will be given to the users. Whenever if you give the software to the users, then you can go for maintenance. So these are the different problem solving steps what we discussed in the last session. And today's session we are mainly discussing about programming construct. The first part, there are, if you take that particular chapter, there are two parts are there. The first part is problem solving steps, and second part is programming constructs. So already first part we finished, we move to the second part, that is programming construct. So what is a programming construct? So before moving to the programming construct, if you take any programming language, not only programming language, if you take any language, that language has its own syntax. If you take programming language, we are saying that is a syntax. And if you take another language, we will take a name that as a grammar. So if you take any programming language, that all the programming language contains its own syntax. What is a syntax? Syntax means is a language. Syntax of a language is a set of rules. If you want to write a particular language, some rules will be. That is actually known as syntax. You should not follow. You should follow the rules always. You should follow the particular rules to write the particular programming language or particular coding. If you want to write means you should follow the particular rules given in a programming language. If you follow the particular rules, we can write any programming language, and each programming language. Think that not only one programming language contains its own grammar. If you take one more programming language that contains its own grammar will be different. So like that, syntax will be different for one programming language and another programming language. But the basic concept, what we are studying here, programming construct, that basic concept will be the same throughout the program. If you take any programming language, this basic concept is same, but the programming syntax is going to differ. The same thing you can implement by using the programming syntax. That we are going to study here. Then, here if you take the programming construct, what is a programming construct? A programming construct is a statement in a program. Normally, if you take the programming construct, how we can write the statement? So that is a statements in a program is actually known as programming constructs. Whenever if you take the program that contains the programming construct, different types of programming construct. Programming construct means statement. If you want to execute the program, normally you should write the statement or instruction. Normally we say. Normally you can say that's the instructions, or you can say that this is statements. That statements in a program is known as programming construct. If you take the programming construct, there are mainly three types of programming constructs are available. The first one is sequential construct, selection construct, and iteration construct. So only these three we are going to discuss in the upcoming sessions. The first one is sequential construct, selection construct, and the iteration. Normal sequential means is a step-by-step execution. Selection means you are going to select, as the name indicates, if that is possible to select the statement. Whenever multiple statements are there, means based on the condition we can select the statement. That is selection statement. Iteration is also known as looping statements. It's possible to repeat the statement. Iteration. It's possible to repeat the statements again and again. So that is also possible. That is iteration. So mainly three types of programming constructs are available. One is sequential, selection, third is iteration. So first we will move to the first type, sequential construct, sequential programming construct. So in case of sequential programming construct, the program statements are executed one after another in a sequence. In case of sequential construct, as the name indicates, sequential, here the program is executing or statements are executed. Normally, we are executing the statements. That statements are executed one after another. Statements are executed one after another in a sequence. In a sequence, one after another, all the statements are executed without skipping any statement. Without skipping any statement. If you wrote the 10 statement, you will execute all the statements. Here you can see single entry with the single exit. From you can start. You can enter the execute first. S1 means the S1, S2, S3 are the statements. You can see here S1, S2, S3 are the statements. So how sequential executed means first control will execute or system will execute statement 1. After go for the next statement 2, next statement 3. So only 3 are given. Like that, if 10 statements are there, means all the statements are executed one after another. All the statements are executed one after another in a sequence. S1, S2, S3, like that 10. Or n statement, you can name it as n number of statements. Possible to execute n number of statements. All the statements are executed without skipping any statements. Remember, sequence is like that, one after another. First will be executed, will go for second one, third one, fourth one, like that. All the statements are executed one after another. But if we take this one, sequential construct, it contains only one entry, one exit. Only single entry will be there and single exit will be there. So one person can enter here, but program execute starts here, ends here. In between is not possible to do. In between is not possible to move. So like that is possible in case of sequential construct. So this is about, here you can see S1, S2, S3 are the simple statement, normal simple statements. S1, S2, statement 1, I know S1 here, statement 1, statement 2, statement 2. Not only 3 statements. We can execute, it's possible to execute number of statements one after another. So if you take here S1, S2, S3 are the simple statements. So what are statements that are available in simple statements? So now we'll move to one more topic, that is the types of simple statement. Here is the types of sequential construct. Already we discussed about what is sequential construct. In case of sequential construct, the statements are executing one after another. First one statement will be executed, after one more statement. So without skipping any statement, all the statements are executed. That is, that type of execution is known as sequential construct. If you take sequential construct, single entry and single execute, the different statements are available. The simple, we can use a simple statement in case of sequential construct. The simple statements are, one is input statement, assignment statement, and also the output statement. Only 3 types of simple statements we can use in case of sequential construct. The first one is input statement. So input statement means we can use any input in a program. In a program, if you want to input some data. In a program, if you want to input some data. So at that time, it is an input statement. So here just name as input ABC. So that is based on the programming language. So syntax based on the programming language, the input will differ. So in case of C programming, we are using scanf statement. In case of C programming, we are using scanf statement. In case of C++ program, we are using the cin statement. In case of Java programming, we are using read statements. So like that, the statements are going to change. Or we can say statement syntax are going to change based on the programming language. But normally it is an input statement. All the programming language, if you take any programming language, all the programming language, the simple statement. Inputs means as a simple statements. So one more is assignment statement. Assignment statement. Assignment statement is A is equal to 10, B is equal to 20, or C is equal to A plus B, I is equal to I plus 1. Like that statements are there. Like that statements. So assign some values. Whenever if you are going to assign some values to one variable, whenever if you are going to assign some value to some other variable, that is actually known as assignment statements. That assignment statement is also known as a simple statement. And last one is output statements. Can use also you can use with the output statement. The output statements are, for example, just I wrote here print. Just I wrote here print ABC in print statement. So that is print statements are also different. In case of C programming, we print F. In case of C++, we are using Cout. So like that, different print statements are available. Normally, any print statement, if you take any programming language, any print statement, that also simple statement. That also we can say sequential construct. Either one is input statement, assignment statement, and also the output statement. These 3 statements are known as simple statements. The next one here is selection statement. So selection constructs. Second type is selection statement or selection construct. There are main second types is selection statement. It is also known as a conditional construct. Remember, the selection of a statement or selection construct is also known as a conditional construct. There are two types. First one is selection statement, sequential statement, next is selection statement. The selection statement is also known as conditional construct. The statements are executed based on the conditions. Here, some condition will be given, or some decision you can take. Some condition, whether you have to check, you have to compare the values. If you want to take the decision, means either you have to compare the values, A is greater than B, or 10 is greater than 20, like that. You have to compare the values. So after comparison, you get either true or false. Normally, if you compare the data, you get either condition will be true or will be false. Based on the conditions, it's possible to execute the statement here. Based on the condition, the statements are going to execute. Means some statements are going to skip sometime. Sometimes some statements are going to skip, or sometimes some statements are going to execute. That is based on the sequence, the selection construct, or it is working based on the some conditions. Some condition will be available based on that condition, whether condition true or false. That's not a matter. Based on the condition, the statements are going to execute. So here, if you take the selection statements or selection construct, there are different statements. Mainly 5 types of selection statements are available, or 5 types of selection constructs are available. The first one is simple if statement. First one is simple if statement. Second one is if else. Second one is known as if else statement. Third one is if else if statement. Third one is if else if statement. Fourth one is nested if statement. This is known as nested if statement. And last one is multiple selection statement. Multiple selection statements, or we can write multiple statements. So we can say multiple selection statement. Multiple selection statement, or also you can name this one as switch statement. It's possible to single selection or multiple selection statements. See, first one is simple if, second one is if else, next one is if else if, next one if else and nested if, next multiple selection statement. Multiple selection statement. The multiple selection statement is also known as switch statements. Here is the first type of selection statement, that is simple if statement. Remember, this simple if statement, also we can say all the selection statement and iterative statement and also sequential statements are very important. Here the first is simple if statement. So what is simple if statement? It is also known as one-way branching or one-way branch statement. Also known as one-way branch or one-way branching statements. This helps execution of particular statement. This helps the execution of particular statement based on some condition or based on one condition. Some condition will be given based on some condition. Based on some condition, the statements are going to execute. Based on the condition, if the condition is true, whenever if you are going to check the condition, remember, whenever if you are going to check the condition will give only two output. If you check the conditions, there some condition will be A greater than B. There is some condition A less than B, or A is greater than 10. A value you don't know what's the value of B. Sometimes we can give the value of 20, A is 20, value of B is one more value. So we can give different values. Then we are comparing whether this one is greater than that one, that is greater than this one. We are comparing. So whenever if you are going to compare, then it will check whether that is equal or it is comparison. We will get only two outputs. The two outputs are, one is true and another output is false. When you are going to compare, whatever if you are going to do a condition this, then after checking the condition, after comparison is normally will come comparisons, or after checking the condition, we will get only one output, either that is true or false. That either true or false, we will get the true value or false value. That is after condition. So if you take a simple if statement, the general format is like this. The general format. The first part you have to check if test condition. You have to use if with open bracket, then test condition. If open bracket, then test condition, then closing bracket. After closing the bracket, then we have to write a statement. So either you can write only one statement here, or number of statements also possible. One after you can just fill the space and write the number of statements possible. So after getting the number of statement, then statement 2 is going to execute. So this is a general syntax. But how this is going to execute? So general syntax is like this: if test condition statement, then statement 2. So you can write simple syntax like that. But others will also written the general format or syntax we can write that. But how this is going to execute? How simple is if is going to execute? Clearly explain. See here. First, it is going to control is moving to check the test condition. Control or system is going to check. Normally it is the control or it is the system. Control is going to check the test condition. After checking the condition, we will get only two output. After checking the condition, we will get only two output. Either output may be true or false. You will get only two outputs. One is true or you will get the false. If you get the true, whenever condition is true, the output A greater than B. A is 10, B is 20. So A is 10, B is 5. We are checking A is greater than B. So this B is greater. So at that time, whenever condition is true, then it is going to execute statement 1. Then it is going to execute, control is going to execute statement 1. After executing the statement 1, we will go for statement 2. So that is actually the simple if statement. Simple if means first control is moving to check the condition. First control is moving to check the condition. If you check the condition, you get two output, either true or false output. Whenever the condition is true, then it is going to execute statement 1. Statement 1 is going to execute. After executing statement 1, we will go for statement 2. But we will check the condition 2 is over. Whenever condition is false, one more output is there. We don't know what is the output. We don't know really. We really don't know what is the output. So either we will get the true or we will predicting. Either we will get true or we will get the false output. Whenever true is there, statement 1 is going to execute. But whenever false, this condition is false means instead of executing statement 1, directly is going to skipping the statement 1 based on the particular condition. Whenever condition is false, then when we skip the statement 1, directly will move to the statement 2. So that is actually the simple if statement. Simple if statement means first control will check the test condition. First control will check the test condition. If the condition is true, then statement 1 is going to execute. First check the condition. Is true means statement 1 is going to execute. If statement after executing the statement 1, directly will move to the statement 2. So if it is true also, statement 1 and statement 2 is going to execute. But if the condition is false, whenever the condition is false means it is not going to execute statement 1. After that, skip the statement 1 and go for next statement. We are going to skip the statements. We are going to skip the statement whenever the condition is false. That is the general syntax explanation. So here is a flow chart for that. So in flow chart, last class we discussed about the flow chart. In flow chart, we are using different symbols. Right. So here is a different symbol. For only the general format for simple if. The general format here is the first we are checking the test condition is condition. We are going to check the condition is condition. Whether condition is true or false. If the condition is true, if you just check the condition, you can write true or false here. See, when the condition is true, here P. You should write that one. You should write that one condition true or false. So whenever the condition is true, then statement 1 is going to execute. Then statement 1 is going to execute. Then after executing the statement, the flow is given like this. So next we are going to execute the statement 2. First condition check. This true, statement 1, then statement 2 is executed. Like that, we will execute one after. So arrow 1 is given. So we don't know what is the next statement. So we will execute one after another like that. But whenever the condition is false, we don't know what is the condition. Normally, we write in general means we don't know either we should predict the output. We don't know what the condition is. Whether the condition will be satisfied or condition will be failed. So when a condition is satisfied means that is true. Whenever condition is failed means that is a false. We will get the either true or false the conditions. Whenever condition is false, means you move to you are going to skip the statement 1, directly going to the second statement. You can see the arrow mark here. You can see the arrow mark flow control. So which is easier to understand, either general format or flowchart. Normally flowchart will be easier to understand. You can arrow mark is given like this. The first test condition is checked. So from here you can start. First what you are checking the condition. You will get check condition. You will get either true or false. Two outputs will be there. So whenever true is there, statement 1, then statement 2. Whenever false means directly going to statement 2, not up. Arrow is going to down, so it is going to statement 2. So here small circles is used for connectors. Here is the statements. I told rectangular box, or it is a rectangle that is used for statements, and this branching statement, decision statements, rhombus, or we can say it is a diamond shape. This shape is mainly used for what we are using that is mainly used for checking the conditions or to make the decisions. For branching purpose, we are using. There are two branches. So not, if you take the normal sequence statement, only one way execution is there. If you take the normal execution, only one way branching is there. But here, behind this one, two ways are possible. There are two ways are possible to reach the outcome. So this is actually the simple if statement. So we can write an example here. How we can write an example? If amount or amount I write A is equal to compare is equal to or you can check is greater than A greater amount is greater than 1000. Amount is greater than 1000. If the amount is greater than 1000, we can give the discount. So discount we can write discount is equal to 10%, 10% by 100. 10 by 100, like that we can do the discount. Otherwise, no discount. Otherwise, we can go for next statement. Now, total amount, when you are going to buy some product, automatically system will calculate the discount. Whenever amount is more than 1000, so we can calculate discount. So final amount is amount minus discount. This is the statement, not like that. So amount is equal to final amount is equal to A minus discount. So discount will be available. Whenever the amount is more than 1000 means we will get the 10% of discount. So that is given F is equal to amount minus discount. Total under 10% is have to minus from the total amount. So that is the final bill. So like that we can use. So here what it is executing? The first control is going to check the condition. Amount is greater than 1000. Check the condition whether the amount is greater than 1000. So if it is there for issue purchase for 2000 rupees, so it is correct. So here amount is greater than 1000. Sorry, I use condition. Sorry, here amount is greater than 1000. So amount is greater than 1000. When if you purchase for 2000 rupees, amount is greater than 100,000. So we should get the 10% discount. So we have to calculate. If condition is true means go for executing the statement. We will go for executing the statement. Discount is equal to 10% of 10%. 10% is equal to discount means then we can still go for next statement, that is if the condition is true. So we can calculate the final amount. Whenever the condition is false, whenever this condition is false, if you only purchase for 999, if you purchase only for 500 rupees, so condition is false. So we are going to skip the statement. The statement which is last is given. So discount will be 0. Discount here will be 0. This is actually about the simple if statement. I think you understood about this one. So what we discussed in this session? Here mainly we discussed about the programming construct. So programming construct means the statement in a program. If you take the programming construct, there are mainly three types of programming constructs that are available. One is sequential construct, selection construct, and also the iteration construct. There are three types of programming constructs are available. After that, we discussed with the sequential construct. But sequential is executing statement one after another. Executing the statement one after another. That is actually known as sequential construct. In the sequential construct, the statements are executed one after another. Then there are different types of statements. Simple statements we can use. The simple statements are one is input statement we can use, selection assignment statement we can use, and also with the output statement. These are the simple sequential statements that we can use. After that, we move to the selection statements. If you take the selection statement, it is execute the statement based on the condition. Based on some condition, statements are going to execute. The different types of selection statements are simple if else, if else if, nested if, and multiple selection statements. That is the switch. So these are the 5 selection statements. In that we put the first one here, simple if statement. We explain like this. Here, a simple if means is a one-way branching statement. It's also known as one-way branching statement. It's an execution of program or particular statement based on the condition. Based on the condition, some statement is executing, otherwise you're going to skip that one. Like that here, this one is a general syntax. First you have to check the condition. If the condition is true, statement 1 is going to execute, then statement 2. If condition is false, skip the statement 1 to go for statement 2. Here is the flow chart. The flow chart you can easily understand. First, control is checked, the condition is checked. The condition is true, then statement 1 is going to execute, then statement 2 like that is going to execute. Whenever the condition is false, we will skip the statement. It's going to skip the statement 1, directly is moving to the statement 2. So like that the statements are going to execute. Remember that whenever if you are going to compare the data or compare the values and you are going to make the decisions, you get only 2 output, either true or false. Other than that, you will not get any output. Based on true or false, we are going to execute the statements. So by here, I reached the end of session today. In this session, we mainly discussed about all these things. So I'll conclude my today's session. Thank you.